Right, we'll get started. So yeah, thank you again for joining us. Hopefully you should know what you signed up for, but this webinar is specific to pre-season pointers with our professional rugby coach, Sam Howard. We will go through a number of topics. We will show certain drills that Sam's provided us that he'll talk through. However, if you have any questions, could I please ask you just to type them in the chat box, which you should find at the bottom of your screen. We will try our best to go through as many of them as possible at the end. However, we can't, for whatever reason, conscious of time this evening, we will definitely get back to you either by email or another method after the webinar. So thank you for joining us this evening, Sam. This is our third webinar, I believe. The first two have been extremely successful, and hopefully this will be just as popular. This is focusing on pre-season pointers, and I'm sure most people might know who you are if they didn't already, but by now. But for avoidance of doubt, Sam, can you just give us a brief background of who you've coached in the past and who you're coaching now, and sort of what you've got ahead this coming season?
Hi guys. Yeah, so I started my coaching sort of journey at Exeter University whilst I was playing for Exeter Chiefs. So I coached the Exeter University for a couple of years, and we won what was then Booster, is now Bucks. I then moved to London and coached. I was head of rugby at Dulwich College for 10 years. We won 3 national titles in a row. I left there and I was head coach at Old Eltamians. And we were in the National League, and I'm currently coaching at St Benedict's School in Ealing and at Charlton Park Rugby in South East London.
Fantastic, thank you. So very broad to start off with, and I think pre-season, everyone talks about it across all sports, but it is a very broad topic. So where do you even start with pre-season? When you hear that and you're planning for a rugby season, where do you start with planning for pre-season?
I really think it depends on who you're coaching. So if you're at a school, it's going to be very different to if you're a rugby club. If you're in national league or high up, what you're going to be doing is very different to if it's a little bit more social rugby. So you do have to understand the team and the players that you've got, and also what you want to achieve as a coach with the players you've got. And it's obviously easier if you've been there for a while. So if you've just started off with a new team, it's difficult to know where you're coming in at. So it's really important that you understand what you want to achieve and also what's right for the team moving forward into the season.
So you touched on it loosely there. Well, what does a successful pre-season look like for you?
So again, it's hopefully after, if let's just say you're doing, for one of the, like with July, and most places start, say, maybe 2 months out. So July and August is your pre-season, and you're starting in September. So you've got to sort of think of the tick boxes. So you've got to get your fitness in, okay? And my thing on that is don't disappoint the players. They're expecting to get beasted. Don't disappoint them. So you've got to get your fitness in. You've got to make sure that come that first game, your set piece is on point. So you've got to make sure that your line out, scrummage, whatever it is, kickoffs, that's all done. And I think sort of understanding the game, the players need to understand the game plan that you want to install. So obviously if you've been at somewhere for a while, that's easy. So you don't have to worry maybe too much on that. You can work on your handling skills, your defense, your tackling. But if you're new, then you've got to get in the defensive system that you want to put in place, the attacking shape that you want to put in place, your set piece, and obviously, as I said, you've got to get the fitness in as well. So it's different, and I've had so many different pre-seasons and run them so differently, but it's very much based on how long I've been there, the players I've got, and the level, the standard that you've got as well.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd ask this question so early on, but as you mentioned it a couple of times, sort of, what's your view on fitness within pre-season? Do you keep it separate from rugby-based skills? Do you try and combine the two? Yeah, how do you go about doing that? Because obviously it is an important element that you have to involve.
Yeah, I think you can you can. I think it's good every now and then that there should just be some out and out beastings, okay, with no ball. And as much as anything, for me, it's you see the mental strength as well as the players, and it's like actually it's not a bad thing for them to be absolutely blowing, having to do shuttles or length or whatever. But you don't want to go old school and run 5 times around the field, because that's just a bit boring for everyone. But yeah, I think there's got to be an element of just out and out fitness. But you've got to mix it up with fitness games, handling skills that are hard, lots of running in your drills. So yeah, I think you can mix it, but I would definitely don't shy away of just putting in, even if it's just a 5-minute blast, 10-minute blast, get some in there within the week. It doesn't have to be every session, because also there's no hiding place there. If you're just playing like fitness games for fitness, you're going to get a few players that can maybe hide away.
Yeah. You say don't disappoint them. Clearly, people are expecting to do fitness, but they may not always want to do it. How would you go about getting them to buy into it if you might have a few players that are a bit reluctant to sort of put in those hard yards?
If they're turning up, they might be reluctant, but they know they're going to do it. So, like, if people aren't turning up, then they don't want to do it. So there's nothing you do. But if the guys and girls are showing up to training, they're expecting it to do it. And you know what? We've all been there. We've all been absolutely blown. At the end of it, it makes the team stronger. It brings everyone together. They've been put, and I sort of try and build in that situation, a them v me situation sort of scenarios. Like, don't let me beat you. Like, don't let me beat you here. Keep going, help it. And my big thing as well is I want them to help each other. I don't want it silent. So if they're doing shuttles, just for instance, say they're in pairs, and half of them are running, half are resting. Those guys that are resting, you're encouraging, you're bigging the other guys up, and you're sort of building that teamwork within fitness. And I think that's really invaluable.
Yeah. I completely agree. It's that buy-in element, isn't it? That what you're doing is actually part of something much bigger, because the season also, not just yourself, but the team. Can you just give us an example of how you might do one certain aspect with a school side, for example, in pre-season, but how that might differ to, say, if you're doing a club first team? Because you mentioned it differs depending on the sort of team.
Yeah.
Example of how that might look.
So you don't have as much, obviously, with schools, they're off the whole of July and August. So you're not going to have it, and lots of schools do it differently in how they do pre-season, and they all the top schools now do a pre-season, which obviously years ago never used to happen. So it's probably a lot more condensed. So for instance, at Dulwich, we would do sort of like 4 or 5 days, like a couple of weeks before the school comes back. Other schools do it throughout. So you've got to be absolutely certain on what you want to achieve in those days, because you can't just absolutely flog them, because the next day they're dead. So you've got to be wary of, within a school situation, of not overdoing it if you're training 4 or 5 days in a row. So whereas in a club situation, it's normally Tuesday and a Thursday and maybe a Saturday morning or 3 nights. So then the players have got time to recover, so you can really go hard with them. And I think it sort of works the way we used to do it. You'd sort of split it up into sort of 3 sections maybe. So a fitness block, a defense block, and an attacking block. And if you've got big numbers, then they just rotate. Smaller numbers, they just do one at a time. Or it might be, at the moment, we're sort of doing just 10 minutes on each, and they go round twice. So I think that's generally how it probably differs a little bit more between schools and adults.
Yeah, just sort of playing devil's advocate a bit. What would you recommend to a coach? Maybe we're looking at junior club age groups here that have a real condensed pre-season, so perhaps only have their team of players for maybe 3-4 weeks max before their first game. What would you recommend? The crams variety of stuff in? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, and again, you can never, and I'm a big believer, you can never forget the basics. So, and I'm almost coming at this almost as a bit of a dad as well. So my son he's 14 and he's doing a little bit of pre-season with his local rugby club on Wednesday nights. And so I try and stay out and helping a little bit. But it's like, okay, if they can't pass and catch, then they're going to struggle through the year. And I never forget that. Like, I think people become, and I know I said about sort of line outs and defense and sort of fitness, but if you've got a group of players that struggle with pass and catch, then you have to do, and maybe this will come in to some of the videos, you've got to use your drills to do fitness and the handling. You probably haven't got enough time to spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes on a fitness block if the players can't pass and catch. So recognize the basics, and that's where, if you don't have time, you've got to do it all at once. You've got to do the fitness, the drills within a handling situation. And it might be a game or it might be a drill. And if it's a good game and you've got buy-in, and with kids you generally do, it's probably easier to do more game-related fitness because they all just want to play and they're not cynical and they're all going to probably work hard. It's more sort of the older guys that might know how to hide than the youngsters.
Yeah, nice. Before we go into the drills, last question. In an ideal world, how many sort of practice games would you have leading into your competitive season? Can you feel like sometimes you overdo it?
No, I don't think you can overdo it. The only way you're overdoing it if you bring too many in early and then you haven't actually done enough training and your systems aren't in place. So if you're happy with where you're at, then yeah, I think that you can. Like, I would have at least two. You've got to have at least two, and maybe three. But I like to do it sort of the first one. You maybe have like 4 20-minute blocks. So it's 20 minutes because you've obviously got big squads and you want to give everyone an opportunity to showcase what they can do. Everyone wants to be in the first team, the A team, whatever. So by doing like a 4 times 20, or maybe there's 3 teams, you do a little round robin. So I like to do that. And then maybe the second one would be maybe 3 30-minute blocks. And then the last one would be a full-on game. But there's lots of, it's great. There's lots of like little festivals, lots of little tournaments, maybe in August, that you can organise or go to or organise yourself if there's 3 local clubs or 3 local schools just get together. But yeah, you've got to have some game time, to see if what you've done is working and the players understand the structures, and B, you've got to give everyone a chance, because the last thing you want is for a player to go, why aren't I selected? Yeah. You haven't even seen me play. So you've got to give the players a chance.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. We're going to move on to some of those drills that you've created for us, Sam. Just a reminder, if anyone's got any questions on what we've just spoke about, anything that's come up individually or on these drills, please do just chuck them into that chat box, and we'll try and get through them all at the end of this webinar. So we'll start off with the first drill. It's just going to come up now. Just a reminder, all of these drills are going to be on the Sportplan website, which you can access under the rugby section. So we'll just start this drill. Sam, if you can just talk us through what's going on here.
Yeah, so basically it's a 3v2 and then into 1 defender at the end. So pretty basic. Again, like when you're attacking, all the sort of drills are of much of a muchness. So the first thing is that you've got 3 attackers in a flat light. So we're working on actually realigning and dropping back into a good position. And then it's just a case of beat the first 2 defenders. Once you've beaten them, again, often players just switch off and then we don't score the try. So always try and maybe have, there you see at the back, you've got that 3rd defender that the players have then got to beat as well. Just on this, I haven't given any sort of instructions on what they have to do. It's apart from starting a flat line, realign, and then just beat them. So they can have little calls if they want. They can run switches, misses, totally up to them. And likewise with the defenders, they just have to, any 2 can come forward. So it's a little bit more disorganized rather than just having 2 defenders in front of 3 attackers. And then it's just rotation, boys come in, and that's it, really.
When a drill is particularly focused on the attackers, what sort of guidance do you then give to the defensive team? Because although the drill might not be specific to them, they obviously play an important role in the drill. So how do you go about doing that?
Great question. And I'm very like, you can't have almost a good attacking drill unless your defenders are sort of playing like their part in it. And likewise, if you're doing a defensive drill, we'll just quickly turn. If you're doing a defensive drill, if the attack's rubbish, then the defense doesn't get any better. So on all my attacking drills, it really is about the attack. So again, as a coach, I understand what you're trying to achieve. So if it is an attacking drill, I literally say to defenders, that's what they can do. If they start that, I don't know what other drills we're looking at, but there's a couple where maybe the defense gets a little bit too aggressive, and you just say, chill out. This is not about you. This is not about your defenders. You're not going to impress me here by, you'll get a chance. There'll be at some stage over the next few weeks, you can knock people about, but understand the drill and just be sensible about what you're doing.
Yeah, I didn't quite see it on that last drill, but the attackers and defenders switching sort of each rep.
So the 3 attackers become the 3 defenders. Yeah. The defenders just go to the side or to the back. Like here, they've got them on the side just for the video's sake, but they may just be in the back, and then they just keep filtering and rotate round. So that's how that works.
Perfect. So we'll move on to the second drill again. Also on our Sportplan website, which you'll be able to see after this webinar. Again, Sam, if you can just talk us through what's happening here.
So this is just sort of representing a bit of chaos, really. All about heads up, looking for space, rather than being from, like, the last one was much more sort of, there's a ruck or a scrum and you've got that sort of position. This is just attackers being defenders. So you have all the attackers on the outside of the square, and then you'll see the 2 guys in bibs, there's a blue bib and orange, they're in the middle. So there's always 3 attackers that have to beat them, and then they chuck the ball to the side, and as soon as they've got the ball, go. So there's a little 2-on-1, and it's about speed. If there's no one in front of you, go forward. Okay, yep. So you've got people dummying, you've got people drawing defenders. And then what you can't really see here, this is a great one for improving sort of organization and communication. So you can just see the guy in blue pointing people to go round, because the little rule on this, you can't pop the ball up to the team opposite you, because then they just keep going backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
So if this group goes forward here and they beat the defenders, they have to chuck the ball to the side rather than the people straight ahead. Okay, because we're a little bit down on numbers. But if you've got more numbers, you can have 4 on each end.
How much are you talking as coach here? You said it's chaotic. How much do you let that chaos unravel, or do you feel like you need to step in at times?
You sort of let it unravel, sort of let it go for a while, and it depends if they're getting the drill. So it might be that they're getting it wrong because it's a new drill and they're not quite understanding it. So you let them go, and then it's like, right, you now understand the drill. Let's have a little bit of quality. And then it's sort of seeing how they get, so they understand the drill, and then you're asking them, right, what are we looking for? So often on that sort of drill, the players get the ball and they almost wait for the defenders to get set, and it's like, no, just speed, bang, 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 like, and then you sort of what sort of this might be represented in a game. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they think, right, it might be a turnover, transition, bang, look up, where's the space, either move the ball to it or run into it. So it's, as I said, it's pretty chaotic. There'll be some errors. But yeah, you might be looking at where do you want the ball? Does it want to be in the middle? Does it want to be on the end? And you're just sort of putting in pointers. I'm not overly sort of not bringing in too many things about like hands up, follow through, because it is chaos. You're going to do that on when it's more handling related. That's all about decision making and beating defenders, which is what the game's about.
Yeah, so I think you kind of answered it there. There are going to be mistakes, regardless of the drill. At what point does the sort of switch flick in your head, thinking, okay, that's too many mistakes here, I need to jump in, compared to actually mistakes are going to happen, they're not a bad thing, I'll just let this drill continue?
I think again, one of the videos I think that we've got on there, it is pretty bad. One of the like, it's not this one, but there's a drill, and it's like, okay, I had to step in a lot more than I would want to. But yeah, and again, there's going to be times you get hit as a coach, you get it wrong, and the drill might be too complicated. So you might be like, right, we'll take one defender out. So instead of having two, you just got one.
Yeah.
To start, and then it's like, okay, look how easy, and that will be probably really easy, or you'd hope it would be. So then it's like, right, let's get back to two defenders, and then let's start working on that. And also, why is it going wrong? So if basically they can't pass and catch, it's like, right, we're gonna have to go back to really boring passing and catching drills. So yeah, so you're understanding why the drill might not be working. Is it too hard? Is it because they're not communicating? Is it because they're being lazy? Is it because they're not concentrating? And then you step in, and hopefully your words rectify it, and it gets better. And if not, then you have to scale it back.
Just for avoidance of doubt, how sort of long would you run this drill for, time wise? What period?
Again, there's also, you could time it if you want. You could do a minute, because it's pretty hard work. Like the defenders especially are working, like, again, it's pretty good fit. It's quite hard work. So it's quite good fitness. So you might want to go for you might time it. So it might be a minute, it might be 30 seconds. It might be until there's 10 scores. So 10 successful ends. So you could do it how it, obviously, the big thing, like most things, is you don't want them to get bored of it. You never want, so that was we did that was part of our sort of circuit. So we did that drill, or that little game, whatever you want to, we did that for 10 minutes.
Okay.
So, but that includes a couple of little pointers, and again, you're asking them what's going wrong, why are we getting it wrong, and they know the answers. It's like, well, we're not concentrating, or like it's too hard. So yeah, so we did that one for 10 minutes.
Is the answer to players looking or getting bored simply moving on to the next drill, or do you find maybe that sounds stereotypical, like school kids, they might get bored quicker, and then you think, what do you do as a coach in that situation? I know the fact that at the session they're probably engaged, should be. Have you got any tips that you could share? Is it as simple as shouting, showing energy yourself, or is there anything else that you do?
You just said it there about energy. I think it comes back to that first webinar we did about sort of actually what you can do with no rugby knowledge. So if you're just stood there like counting your clock, going, yeah, well done, like they're gonna like. But if you're bringing energy, you're like, I don't know exactly, like I'm fairly vocal, so it's like, yeah, excellent. You're building them up, and if someone's getting it wrong or not quite understand, you just grab that one person, and say, right, you're not quite getting this right. This is what you want to be looking, without stopping the whole drill. And I think players can generally go for longer than what a coach thinks. So I think, oh my God, this is going on for too long. Or like, even if it's a game, like actually, most players, if they're playing games, can play for, like, you think about kids in school playgrounds, they could play for an hour and a half at lunch, the same game. So so don't be in a rush to stop. But you'll soon see, biggest indicator, if they start talking to each other, if they stop doing the drill and they're just having a chat, then you know you've lost them.
Yeah. Okay, nice. I think we've got another drill. We'll just move forward to that again. Sam, can you just say what you see, explain what's going on?
Oh yeah, so this is like the sort of handling relay drill. Again, this is sort of one of my go-tos because you can do so much of it. So basically, there's two groups here, but you can do it with just one group. So if you're looking at the group on the right, okay, so in a traditional sort of relay line of 4. First person will go forward, okay, and then it's just hands down the line. The person at the end pops the ball up to the next group coming forward. The two people in the middle turn and come back again. So the two people in the middle are working hard, and it's just a constant quick. And the thing you're looking at, this is where you are looking at the score. You want that early catch. Look, so here we go. So we're trying to get quick hands. Then the next group would come in. So this is the first time this lot have ever done this. Okay, so I'm giving them quite a lot of chat. So you see the two people in the middle are working fairly hard. Early catch, push through, and obviously you're feeding in, run straight. So if you've just got one group, there's only two people on the cart. Once they've done 10, then another two people in the middle. If you've got a large group like we've got here, okay, you can have two groups, and then you can make it competitive. So the yellow group, or the team on the right, okay, are against the team on the left, and they've got that get there and back 10 times. So you're actually putting a bit of pressure on them. Okay, can they handle? And again, towards the end, under a little bit of fatigue and under the pressure of actually being in a bit of a race and a competition. And suddenly you see balls go down, rather than when it's actually, there's nothing to it.
Yeah. How much do you use that competitive element in pre-season?
Um, Again, probably more and more. I try to. And again, this is an easy way. Certain things you can't. Certain things it's just the drill doesn't lend itself to. But again, I think probably half of the drills, if not more, that are on the site, you can add a competitive element to it. It might be a timing element. It might be how can you do 20 passes, whatever. So I think it's good. It adds a little bit of pressure, adds a little bit more competition, adds a little bit of fun to it. And like again, when you can hear it, you can hear all the boys. They're cheering, they're shouting, they're enjoying it. But the big thing you've got to sort of keep focusing on what they're trying to achieve there. So the big thing is the guys in the middle, that early catch, and move the ball. Okay. And if they're doing that, then you can look at are they running straight? What depth have they got? The speed and stuff. But it gets them passing and catching a lot, which is good.
All about volume, yes.
Yeah.
In terms of that competitiveness, I've read quite a lot about this in terms of what you should and shouldn't do. Obvious way of sort of adding pressure is competitiveness, sort of racing against other teams. What's your view? Is that the route you always go down, or do you sometimes choose like forfeits, so physical forfeits, for example, if a team doesn't achieve what they're set out to do?
Not only in a fun way.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
for instance, like quite like just like sort of like a 2-on-1 drill where it's competitive, bit like that. But man in the middle, 2-on-1, then you pop it up, they go back. If the attackers can get 10 in a row, then the players come up with a forfeit for that player, and they're all cheering, and it's like they'd never meet like right. The losing team has got to go and do 25 like shuttles or something like that. And for me, actually, when I use it more in terms of right, losing team puts all the equipment away.
Nice.
It would more be something like that because, and you want to get them. And I will say, you don't want a team that's happy losing. So you want that sort of, I want you to win, but it's more a case of right, you're putting all the equipment away, and then you're going, actually, you're all going to help because we're all going to be good blokes. But you sort of do it in that sort of way rather than sort of punishment.
Yeah, the buy-in element to it as well, isn't it? Okay, so I think we've got one more drill. Again, I won't apologise for repeating myself, but if you've got any more questions, please stick them in the chat box, and you can find all these drills on our Sportplan website. So we'll just play this last one through.
So I think this is a little speed one again, like they use as a. So yeah, so this is a real basic speed race. And I'd probably just use this more as like a fitness drill than an actual. I wouldn't use it that often as a sort of handling drill. So all it is, they're lined up back to back. Okay, they're sprinting as fast as they can, hands down the line, turn around, go back, and the first team back sort of wins the point, and you have them sort of going. So yeah, it's really simple. Again, might use it towards the end of a session, just a little bit of fun as well. Players like it. You can vary the distance between the players off, so you can have it wider. You could have them doing it 4 times there and back, which makes it a little bit harder in terms of fitness. So yeah, so more a case of a bit of fun, but still you're looking for that, again, constant messages, that early catch, quality of pass. And when they're getting competitive, they sort of lose their concentration. So there's a little bit of, look, you've got to concentrate while still working hard. So yeah, wouldn't use that one too often, that one, but a bit of fun. And it's again, there's nothing wrong with having an armory of drills to pull out the bag.
Absolutely, no, they're really good. How would you throw in a game element, so match sort of scenario based stuff in pre-season, or would it all be very much drill based? Or and then at what point do you then start to transition into something more match related games?
Yeah, so no, so when I was at Old Altamians, most of the attack stuff that I was doing, and to be fair at Dulwich, when you're away from structure, okay, I think with the higher the players, you would hope that their handling is of so I wouldn't do that much of that stuff that we've just seen, sort of with a higher level. And if it was, it would be for way less. It might literally be 2-minute sharpener at the start, just to get going. Everything else would be a lot of what I like is a lot of sort of overload touch. So more attackers than defenders. So maybe playing 8v5, 10v6, 10v7. So there's always space. And again, early on in pre-season, it will be pretty loose. Literally, there's the ball, just go and beat them. And you can obviously bring in different rules on what happens when you touched, how many hands have got to be, whatever, stuff like that. But it would be pretty loose, just see space, go and attack. And then as you build through, it will be, you might want to slow the breakdown down. So it might be you've got to go down, go long, 2 players over. And whilst that's going on, the attackers are building a little bit of shape and doing a couple of plays maybe to beat the defense. And you're building up that structure as it goes on. But you're always, again, you've got to know what you want from the session. So it might be, I want to, and I do, the way I want to get as much offloading as possible. So in those games, it's offload, offload, offload. But then it's then hard to get structure into your game because everyone's offloading. So it might be, and again, there's nothing wrong as long as there's a reason for what you're doing. It's like, right, there's no offloads in this game. Some coaches, well, you can never say that. But it's like, right, we're not working on offloads here. We're working on the ball is going to be a little bit slower. Can we get organized? But as quickly as possible, we don't sort of go, let's slow it down because then the defense get organized. So you're building in games around your game as well. So, but I think that's a lot easier with the higher up. The better quality you've got, that's a lot easier to do.
I hate this word, but do you ever give your players homework? Something for them to go away and do outside the session? And if you do, what could you give an example of what?
I'm pretty bad, and I know, and I probably should do. It's like, yeah, go. My biggest thing for kids is watch as much rugby as possible. Watch as much rugby as possible. And I used to, I would have thought that a lot of, I'm a great rugby player, a lot of players that achieved or played to a good level probably watched a lot as a kid. And I used to watch rugby all the time. So my biggest thing, yeah, watch rugby. But in terms of homework, it might be, and actually I'm talking nonsense here. Actually, I do. I get so kids that are struggling, maybe with spin passing, just get a ball and spin pass on your own. I don't like just chuck it up, get used to spinning the ball. Get a football, throw it against the wall and it comes back to you. And get used to that motion, that passing motion. So yeah, so it might be stuff like that. And again, you're working with kickers and throwers. That's a bit more individual. But yeah, if people are struggling with their passing, especially how to spin pass, then yeah, there's a lot you can do on your own for
that. One last question before we go into the questions in the chat box. I think we've got a couple of good ones in there. What advice would you give? Again, it's probably focusing on sort of age group club rugby to a coach that maybe pre-season hasn't gone as well as they would have liked. They haven't had the numbers because of family holidays and things like that. Is there any advice that you could give? Just, yeah, what would you say to those sort of coaches?
You just got to try and not worry about it. There's nothing you do. It's gone. It's gone. And I've been there. Like you want more players, but as you said, suddenly they're all on holiday, or they're all bloody Reading Festival or somewhere like that. so it's like, but you've just got to still know where you want to get to. So if you, in that last week when you have got everyone before your first game, right, have we got a very simple but effective lineup? Yes, we have. Even if we've only got one call, but we know it and we can do it well. Just stick with that. Sort of, do we have a defensive system? Does everyone understand what we're doing defensively? And it doesn't matter what it is, but everyone has to understand it. So are we competing at the breakdown? Are we not? How are we drifting? Are we line spin? Whatever it is, just make sure everyone's on the same page. And in attack, likewise, it might be, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like, it might be the first few weeks, right, we're just going to focus on looking after the ball. So let's not do crazy offloads. Let's just look after it. So whatever, just understand where you're at. You can't do anything about that's gone. And just try and get as prepared as you can for that first competitive game. and keeping it really simple. Nothing wrong with keeping it simple.
Yeah, great. Basics. Perfect. Let's have a look in this chat box then. I do believe we've got a couple. So the first one from Sean says, "Hi Sam, when pre-season fitness starts, how long should it take a player to get fit enough for that first match, or what timelines do you give players?" So I'd like to add to that as well. Like, how do you define fit enough? Like, what is your acceptable level? Again, I assume it's changing depending on your team, but what standards do you give to those players?
I think again, it's do you know the players? So if you know a player, you've had them the season before, and then suddenly they rock up. First thing you do is by looking at them. So you're like, right, you put on some timber. So, or it might be the other way.
As blunt as that, how do you go about? Because obviously,
like body shaming. I suppose you shouldn't do that. But again, it's what relationship have you got with that player? So I'm not gonna say that to a 15, 16-year-old boy that I don't really know. If it's my first 15 captain that I've known for however many years, I've got that relationship and I'm at it. So it is understanding that, right? And also it's when you're doing it. You don't want to be doing it in front of everyone and they pick up on it. Whereas if it's just you and it's like, it might be fine. So, but then it's understanding and also how you want to play. So if you guys are like, right, we're going to be playing an offloading fast game, we've got to be fit. We're going to have to do a load of running. So you're going to build that into the way you play. If you're going to play a bit more of a controlled game, you might not have to focus on the fitness as much. But I think it's just having a feel. Like 2 months, if someone's training 2 or 3 times a week and you're working quite hard, they can get good fitness games in those times. You should have most players where you want to get to. But again, there's that homework. It might be, right, you're going to have to do a couple of sessions on your own. And like with the modern day, it's easy just to look up 10-minute running drill, 10-minute swimming drill. Like I'm in France and I'm actually doing some work in the swimming pool. And it's hard, but it's 10 minutes and you're done. So yeah, I don't think there's any hard rules, but yeah, within 2 months, if everyone's training 2 or 3 times a week, you should be in a pretty good situation.
It's not particularly relevant to this topic of the webinar, but in terms of fitness, how do you continue that throughout the season? Is it something, right, we're going to nail it at pre-season and then we're relying on match fitness and general training as the winter progresses, or are you always conscious of doing a bit, throughout the season?
Again, I think it's what team you've got. How if you're training twice a week and you've got your whole first and second team squad turning up to every session, then yeah, you want to. I think you should always try and keep some fitness element in there. Even as I said, like you can batter players in 6 to 7 minutes. So it's like you want to try and keep that going. If you're struggling for numbers and you're only training once a week, I have to admit I would probably forego it. And concentrate on your skills, your handling, unless, as I said, and maybe use it more as a sort of right building the team up and sort of seeing whether they can encourage each other. So it's but I think you've got to like that. I think a lot of players recognise that the fitness will dip as the season goes on. But there might be natural breaks in the season where you can actually do a couple of weeks of real hard fitness if there's not games on a Saturday or something. And again, if you've got access to a gym, access to personal trainers, people generally like to get involved. Bringing in different people and different voices is always great, and using it in the fitness.
Yeah. Just out of interest, sort of strength and size aside, how can you often see the difference in fitness between certain teams? Probably at school rugby. Can you say like, okay, we've won that because of our fitness, or we've lost that because of our fitness? Do you think it plays that bigger part? Like I said, strength and size aside.
If I'm honest, I don't know. I think more that actually, I suppose we've lost that because we lost our leg. I'm more looking at it as if I've lost rather than if I've won, we've won because of our fitness. More looking at actually why did we lose that game? Actually, we looked a bit leggy, or we looked a bit tired, and they were fitter than us. And I don't think it actually comes from someone scoring a try because they've run around you because you're not fit. It's more you make more mistakes towards the end of the game because you're tired.
Yeah.
And and maybe someone's not hitting a ruck because they're not fit enough to. So I think that, but again, most teams are playing at a level playing field, really. So most school teams now, if you're playing like Dulwich, the teams we're playing, nearly every one of those schools has got S&C coaches, and they're all working really hard. So actually, it's not that. I think maybe down the pyramid a little bit more. So more social like levels, maybe 5 to 8. If you're fit there, it probably is going to make a bit of a difference. If you, in the last 10, 15 minutes, you guys are still able to hit rucks, keep your width, defend well, you probably will make a difference at that level.
Contradicting myself here, I think fitness is really important, but equally, I always find it's the first sort of excuse that people or pundits can give, like, oh, they're not quite fit enough. It's like, well, there are other elements as well. It always seems to be an easy excuse, I feel, for people to throw at players.
Yeah, you're not fit enough, but you also
yeah, exactly.
That was more important.
Yes. Question from Carl here saying, curious on approach if you're picking up a new group with different levels. So how do you go about a pre-season when you've got a vast difference of golfing ability levels?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's not easy. So it's a new group. I don't know them, and there's loads of different ability levels. So if you've got, I think, again, start with you play games.
Mm-hmm.
So you're recognizing sort of who's maybe the better players. And so say you've got a bigger, say let's say it's 30 plus. Like that's a chunky number that you're dealing with. So you're putting them into games, and then when it comes to drills, you can be very, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this, you can be very specific, or they might not even go, right, just give people bibs, and right, U15 are working there, U15 are doing that, and you're doing the same drill, but in 2 groups. Because if you've got large numbers, you don't want big queues anyway. So you probably want, a bit like I did on the other one, you've got one group that working there, one group working there. And you just sort of try and differentiate a little bit and put maybe the better players with the not so, and then the other ones. Because what you don't want is people coming frustrated. So you don't want the better players becoming frustrated with the not so good ones, but then you also don't want to put off the not so talented ones coming back and playing, because we want as many people playing the game of rugby as possible. So you try and maybe mix, and there'll be times where they can play games and they're all together and you can change the rules. But it's tough. It's a tough challenge, and but you've got to try and differentiate a little bit if you can.
You're an experienced rugby coach. How long do you think it takes you personally to gauge whether he or she is a good rugby player, and to trust that opinion? Is that something you think you can pick up on fairly quickly, or does it take a bit of time?
I think you can pick up very quickly, but I'm not necessarily. In fact, I'm not looking for good rugby players. I'm looking for people with great attitudes. Okay. So if I get a group, my first thing I was always say to them is, I don't care about talent. I care about attitude. So, and it's my job to make them good rugby players. So it's my job to teach them how to pass and catch properly. And that's on me. But if they're willing to work hard, then we're going to be all right. Because there are so many talented players out there that don't make anything of their talent because they're lazy, they want to muck around, they're not that bothered. So obviously having both is the dream, obviously, and they're the guys that go on to be superstars. People that work hard and have talent is fantastic. But yeah, I'm not that fussed. It doesn't bother me if someone can't pass and catch, because they may have only been playing the game for 6 months or never. So it's my job to make them better.
I think that's a really good piece of advice for coaches, almost as a starting point for pre-season, isn't it? Make that point early on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about attitude, not talent.
We've got a question from David that is linked to that previous question, but more specific to his situation, which is perfect. Specific question related to my situation every year. Who is responsible to ensure each player from novice to advanced know enough, so enough obviously is quite subjective, of the laws of rugby to be self-confident and understand what the coach tells them and why?
Yeah, that's a good question, and one that probably a lot of coaches overlook. You presume or assume that the players know what's going on in certain elements and that especially with law changes every year, like we won't talk about the tackle height, but like just the sort of the dropout under the posts now, like that's coming. Like when is it a dropout under the post? When's it a 22? So yeah, so it's it's definitely a coach's job to make players aware of maybe offside lines, just what the lines are on the pitch. Some of them might not understand what they are or why they're there. So, but again, that comes through games. You can like make games. You want, especially with youngsters, you want to be playing lots of games anyway. So even in so it's like, right, actually, we're going to finish with a 15-minute full-on game. And within that, it might be what we will do is whenever there's a fence, we will always have a scrum. So there'll be no lineouts, there'll be no free kicks. So then, right, where do we stand on scrum? What are you allowed to do in scrum? Or it might be we will always have a lineout. And so they're understanding that. So you're built right. We're going to now just whenever we're always going to start off kickoffs. Where do people stand? Where are you allowed? So you're trying to bring in understanding through the actual game, because if you were just to try and explain the offside line at a ruck or something, it's gibbly-goop. So actually, but showing them what it looks like makes it a lot easier. And so yeah, try and explain the rules. Don't presume they know it.
I think that's a good point. I like that. Final question before I answer this final question. If you think of a question as soon as we finish this call or later this evening, feel free to email it in at info@sportplan.com, which is listed in this chat box, and we will get back to everyone with an answer. But the final question, Sam, from Michael Williams. With the new law variations, there's also been a few of them, do you think that better fitness will be key to the way the game will be played? So how do you sort of see that? Because you just need to look back 10, 15 years and the build of players is quite a bit different. How do you see that going forwards?
Well, yeah, I think everyone seems to presume, and the chat seems to be, that the game is going to be quicker. There's going to be more offloads because people are going to be tackling lower. And obviously, if there is more offloads, there's more ball in play, then players are going to have to be fitter, and the sort of the big lumpy players are going to probably struggle if that is the case. But I don't think we're going to see such a drastic change because there are a lot of good coaches out there, and so you're going to just have to maybe defend in a few more numbers to stop the offloads. And if people are offloading a lot, I think there's probably going to be more drop balls, so there'll be more scrummaging. So I don't think it's going to change too much. I think that the game has got quicker anyway, and I think like if you've ever seen like the top players, they're not as massive as you think. Like they're big, but the game at the Premiership, like the Premiership rugby, it's so quick. So you like, and actually talking about like the Championship players are way bigger than Premiership players because the game's not as quick, and so that they can get away with just having beasts. But yeah, I think that the way the game is playing, the way people are sort of coaching, is a much more game based and wanting to keep the ball alive. And speed of play, speed of ruck, he's also trying to speed up. So yeah, so the fitter teams may over the next year or so be the ones that have a bit more success.
I can remember going and watching Premiership rugby, and that's always my first impression. I couldn't believe how quick the forwards and in particular the front row moved. So obviously you see on TV and just assume they're big lumps, but actually they're a bit more than that.
The specimens.
Yes, correct. So that brings us to a good stopping point. Thank you very much, Sam, for joining us, taking the time out of your time out in France. A bit of pre-World Cup scouting, I hear, but
No, it's lovely.
and thank you very much for everyone else for taking the time to join us. As I mentioned at the start, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar to all our rugby subscribers, and all of the drills that we showed in this webinar and more are on our website, Sportplan, under the rugby section, as well as a number of other resources. However, of course, any questions, regardless of the topic, please feel free to contact us at info@sportplan.com. So on that note, thank you once again, Sam and everyone, and we'll draw this to a conclusion. Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Cheers, guys.